Hello, hello. Welcome back to Scale with Clarity. So today's episode, I'm tackling a topic that doesn't get enough attention, in my opinion. It's the intersection of marriage and entrepreneurship. I know when I went out on my own, the conversations I had with my husband, the ones I continue to have with him and his corporate job, me taking the entrepreneurship route, the risks that we want to take, the income that we want to commit to. It's an ongoing conversation, one that I've continued to learn about myself, that's continued to grow our relationship, and has continued to place an emphasis on the communication that we need to have. So I'm really excited to have Kathy Rushing on the podcast. She's a former marriage and family therapist turned relationship coach who knows firsthand the challenges and opportunities of building a business alongside your spouse. Kathy shares her personal journey, the struggles she and her husband faced as entrepreneurs, and also introduces her powerful CRAVE framework. It's a guide for communication, connection, and vision in relationships. So we get into all of that in this episode. And if you've ever wondered how to balance love and business without losing either, you're in the right place. So let's jump in. Welcome to Scale with Clarity, the podcast for entrepreneurs who are building a business and a life that actually feels good. I'm Brooke Koeninger, fractional CFO, strategist, and mom of three, and I've learned that scaling isn't just about hitting revenue milestones. It's about finding alignment between your big vision and your everyday reality. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with founders who are redefining success on their own terms. We'll talk about the pivots, the aha moments, and the tough decisions behind the scenes. Plus, the surprising ways entrepreneurship becomes the greatest personal growth journey of all. Whether you're dreaming of leaving corporate, navigating the messy middle, or trying to grow without burning out, this show is here to help you scale with more clarity, confidence, and ease. Because building a business should expand you, not deplete you. Let's scale with clarity together. Kathy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on here.
So happy to be here.
I'm going to tell the listeners, Kathy, we were talking just before we pushed record that you and I have known each other in different circles for quite a while, but this is the first time we're finally getting on any type of video to see each other one-to-one and have a conversation. So this is going to be like our meeting conversation because I gave you a little snippet of this, but I want to tell others and I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. But
Sure.
When I first found out what Kathy did, I grew up in a family that my parents were entrepreneurs. My dad left his job, his corporate job, early on when I was young, and seeing a behind the scenes view of an entrepreneurial couple and family and just the unique, I saw the highs and lows and how do we make payroll. And so for what that did for me now being an entrepreneur is one, it did make me think that it's possible. Like I wasn't scared to try it and go out on my own. I have a husband who's still in his corporate job, but I also was not blind that it's not easy. It's not easy in terms of just your own mental fortitude, which I'd love to talk to you about that, but the relationship and the support and the unique conversations and all that. And so I want to start from there and I want to just pause. Can you introduce yourself and kind of talk a little bit about what you do now and who you work with?
Sure. I'm Kathy Rushing, and I founded Lodestar Relationship Coaching about a year and a half ago. I was a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 30 years. And I last had a private practice in Texas. And after about 10 years of that, I had worked in a couple of settings prior to that. But I launched my private practice the same year that Mark launched his business, which we'll get to that later, I'm sure.
And Mark is your husband?
Mark is my husband, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And of 45 years. So,
congratulations. Okay. We need a whole nother episode on just longevity of marriage. That's what we need.
Yes.
I'm at 17 years. I'm still feel like it's new and I'm learning how to communicate to him.
I know. Yeah. We married as babies, childhood bride.
So you're just celebrating your 45th birthday next week as well.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, congratulations.
In my head, I really am in my 40s. It's so weird. But I kind of burned out and thought I wanted to go into business coaching and tried that for a little while. And then I realized at some point that there weren't really resources for that intersection of marriage and entrepreneurship. There's lots of marriage books, lots of business books, Nobody was addressing the intersection. And there is so much, like for all of the highlight reels that we see on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever, success stories, Inc. magazine. My husband got to the point where he stopped his subscription of Inc. magazine because he was really tired of reading about these tech startups that, 2
Yep.
years and they've made $1 billion. And, meanwhile, small business is just slogging
Yep.
away. It's a
Yep.
long, slow, and never a straight path. It's up and it's down. And so, yeah, so I was doing it as kind of a passion project. I
Yeah.
started a podcast, I write a blog, I put together resources and have a website. Well, during the pandemic, we had a business that we'd had for 22 years. And Mark started it, like I said, in 98. It was an assisted living for Alzheimer's patients.
Yeah.
Should have gone on long after we were gone. It was our retirement.
Mm.
And the pandemic, there was no way to plan for a pandemic that was literally going to shut down our business for months. And we ended up losing that business. And I was like, about 3 years ago, I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to work. So
Yeah.
one thing about entrepreneurs, if you don't have some resilience, you better put on your big girl panties and find it because
Uh, Kathy. Okay. Yes. And I don't want to interrupt, but there is that even just 2 minutes of your story. There's so many offshoots that I would love to go through. Because first, has Mark always been entrepreneurial? Was that like when you married him? Was that like, did he have that kind of personality too? And talk me through that transition.
nope, it could not have been more different. Um, First of all, we married in 1980, did not know the word entrepreneur or entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Now it's like
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, I want to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. He was going to be a pastor. So, so
Okay. Yeah.
I was in graduate school. He went to seminary and he finished seminary. And but about, I don't remember how far into seminary, maybe in his first year, he announced one day, I think I want to start a church. I'm like, what does that even mean? My plan was I wanted to work like maybe in a church counseling center or something like
Yeah.
that, a faith-based counseling center, perhaps. I'm like, starting a church. I don't think they're going to be big enough for a counseling center. So
Yeah.
I actually got my degree at the University of North Texas. He finished up. It was kind of a process, but we did go to California and started a church. And back in the mid-'80s, I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with Rick Warren, but he was a big deal then. His
Mhm.
church in California was growing, and every church planter thought they were going to be Rick Warren. And it was hard work. So that was really our first entrepreneurial venture
Were
without
you,
knowing it.
yeah. Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family, or was this like when
No,
he came to you with this idea? Were you like, what was the
clueless.
nervous system like? Were you like, can we do this? Or you're like, let's try it?
No, it was ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
It was as
Mm-hmm.
ignorant
Yeah.
as could
Ignorance is
be.
bliss. Truly. Right. Yeah.
It was. No, my dad was an engineer. My mom, stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
No, there was not an ounce of entrepreneurial anything. But I I had a sense pretty early on that I didn't really want to work for anyone else. But again, I didn't have a name for it. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I could be kind of
Yeah.
bossy, and I wanted to be my own boss.
I can be bossy. Don't want to be bossed around though. Hey, you're very clear on yourself at an early age. I like that.
Yes. And I mean, like, I envisioned myself, working in a private practice. But I didn't think of that like a business. So I didn't
Yeah.
take any business classes or anything like that. And I didn't really have any guidance at that time. My parents had divorced my senior year. Dad was gone, out of the picture. Mom was falling apart. So it was just me trying to, kind of
Yeah.
work my way through the world. So no, I had no idea what that was, nor did Mark. He didn't really have an example of that either. And so we did that for a few years, and then We ended up closing the church because we had a couple of key families who moved,
Yep.
and it was kind of like starting over again. And we were kind of burned out at that point because it was literally just me and Mark who started. We kind of limped back to Texas with 3 kids,
Um,
young. Our daughter, the youngest, was a year old.
oh my
Moved
God.
in with my in-laws in a 1,500 square foot house.
Oh my
It was so
goodness.
fun. And we still liked each other,
What a good
So,
story right now
yeah,
to be told too. But truly, you
yeah.
still liked each other.
I love my in-laws. My father-in-law's gone, but, so Mark kinda went through, soul crisis
Yeah.
and career crisis, and a neighbor told him about it was a postgraduate certification that you could get if you already had a degree. So he did. He got that in healthcare administration and started managing nursing homes.
Hmm.
And he discovered pretty quickly that he was really good at turning things around. Like, he would get called in when the state had written them up and everything. And so he'd come in, turn things around, and then get bored. Again, there's kind of a pattern here, and
Yep.
he doesn't have a framework for it. And that during that time, the nursing home industry was in a real consolidation era. So they were buying up
Hmm.
nursing homes. They would buy up nursing homes, escort the staff out, and bring in their own team. So that happened twice. And after the second time, that's when Mark decided, how hard can it be? I'm just going to start my own. So, all of the things that I will share today about questions you should ask,
Yeah.
conversations you should have, we just kind of went, how hard could it be? Well, it
I
was
mean,
really hard.
there's 2 things. One is Mark, and you by default, or also just through the
Mhm.
story, are the epitome of, I think sometimes people try to plan out the path. And where I, in my journey, got off is looking externally at, like, the college career, and then kind of
Mhm.
go along the corporate path of what's the next step that makes sense. And what I'm hearing from yours and Mark's story is sometimes it can feel like it's never a linear path, nor should it be. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it. But the real, the real unlock is it's in following the breadcrumbs of what you like and whatever you're doing at the time, it sounds like. And it's so hard. For me, I think the quickest path to unhappiness perhaps is looking externally. You can get ideas of what people are doing, try and help you think outside the box, but to look to someone else and say, okay, that's what I should be doing, you really got to look inward and be like, what do I like about this? What do I not
Yeah.
like about this? Because I talk to so many people that have been in a job maybe for 20 years and are unhappy. And you get to a point where you're just like, I hate everything about it. But I like to maybe argue, and perhaps I'm wrong with this, but there's something in that has kept you, that had you choose it in the first place, or that kept you there. So if you can
Mhm.
practice the art of looking internally and saying, what is it? Is it the people? Is it the industry? Is it the type of work I'm doing? And so for you and Mark's story, what I'm hearing is it was perhaps the industry, because then you guys went on to, I know, to stay in a similar industry, but was, I like turning around things. I get unhappy when it's like more stagnant and stay same. So there's like pieces in there that you can kind of pull out, but it's a real internal learning of like, what is it? What do I like and what do I don't like? Does that resonate? Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Do you agree with that?
Oh, it does. I think, and Mark would heartily agree with this because he is definitely the entrepreneur. I am a solopreneur. I have
Hmm.
zero desire to ever build
I'm the
something
same.
with employees.
Same.
Our
Hmm.
assisted living had almost 300 employees
Wow.
at its peak. And one of the things that we would both say is that is a critical self-awareness, self-development is a critical piece of development. And that's whether you stay in a job or whether you do explore the possibility of setting out to do your own thing. Because I think a lot of times people just get unhappy. I'm going to go do
Yeah.
my own thing.
Yeah.
but they have no self-awareness about their strengths or about their blind spots.
Yes.
They just go and
Yes.
do it, and then they're
Yeah.
drowning and they don't understand. When I closed my practice, Mark asked me, he said, can you find some tools that we could use as part of our hiring process? So, my psychology background, and I love
Yep.
to nerd out on research. And so I found this company called TTI, Target Training International. They're in Phoenix. And they put out the DISC, and
Mm-hmm.
they put out an assessment called Motivators. They have a whole suite of different tools that can be used in business for talent selection, onboarding, that sort of thing. So the first thing I did is I got certified in the DISC profile,
Mm-hmm.
DISC.
Yep. See.
If
Yep.
anyone has never taken that, it's there's lots of personality things you can do, but what I like about the DISC is it's 4 dimensions, so it's pretty easy to wrap your head around
Mm-hmm.
what the different dimensions are, and it's really useful. I use it with couples. I have a package called Uniquely Us, where each person takes this, and then we talk about their communication styles, because it was such a profound aha moment for
Mm-hmm.
Mark when I gave
Yeah.
him the disc. So D is dominance, and he was not 100%, but maybe 99%, which dominance, the high D is the driver. They think fast, walk fast, talk
Yeah.
fast. Um, and they tend to be your entrepreneurs. Now, you can find entrepreneurs in any of the 4 dimensions, but there's a plethora that are
Yeah.
high Ds.
Yeah.
Well, when we took that and unpacked the report that comes with that, I mean, it truly was eye-opening for him,
Yeah.
because until that point, and I didn't realize this, we'd been married, I don't know, 25? No, I don't even know how long we'd been married at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but um, he told me, he said, I felt like there's been something wrong with me all these years
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't just get a job and be happy. And so he had internalized that, like you said, looking outward, going, well, this is the path I should take. I've been to college, and this is what all my peers are doing, but it didn't fit him. And
Yeah.
so he felt like a square peg always trying to go
Yeah.
into a round hole.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know if it was good or bad. It kind of unleashed him, because then he was like,
This
now
is
I
who I am.
know.
Yeah.
This is
I'm not
who
going to
I
hold this
am.
back. This is my
Yeah.
strength. This is what I'm going to go after. This is what
Yep.
differentiates me. I want to pause there because this is your field of expertise, so feel free to disagree with me. But I am a true believer in everyone taking therapy and doing therapy, but I feel like ignorance was bliss for me for a while. And the first step was even awareness that I was a perfectionist or a people pleaser. I was outsourcing my
Mhm.
identity to the job instead of figuring out what I want, like all of those things. And switching into leaving my corporate job and becoming an entrepreneur, that was the deepest form of forced therapy before perhaps I was even ready. Because you talk about
Yeah.
self-awareness,
Mhm.
and there was so many aspects of it that pushed me into, why do I feel like my pricing's too high? Why is my nervous system out of whack? I have to write an about page on my website. What do I even stand for? Who do I want to work with? Like all of these questions came up. So there was
Mhm.
then it kind of threw me into this, oh, I don't know. There's so much awareness of myself that I need to kind of dig into. And it was like,
Mhm.
ready or not, here it comes. And I think there is so much to be said for kind of, one, figuring out who you are. But then, like you said, Mark, his high D, there's so many things out there. But for me, one of the ways that played out was I always thought like I just was chasing shiny object syndrome. I'm do this and then I'm going to do this and then I want to do this. And I thought as negativity, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
women too, if we can dig into
Mhm.
this, probably there's some high EQ in a lot of, men and women, but sometimes that can also be said like, oh, you pick up the energy of others. And so you're like, anxious or you feel the sadness, whatever it may be when you walk into a meeting. And so a lot of those skill sets that I look at now as benefits, I thought was a negativity. But then as you become
Mm.
more aware, and especially in a world like entrepreneurship, which I think opens up, you're not in this defined culture that you have to fit into. You can kind of create your own, like,
Mhm.
what's the world I want to, what kind of job, what do I want to do? It forces you to be aware of these differences, but then maybe embrace them in a way or decide you don't want to. But for me, it was like, it's not shiny object syndrome. I have ideas that come and I'm evolving forward and I'm figuring out what I like. You know, it was the flip of that. And similarly, the energy, I'm like, I'm in finance, you know, it's usually black and white, but this is what can
Yeah.
differentiate me because I can see, you know, people want to relate on a different level and I want to embrace that and not think that I'm not, you know, I'm not, you know, bringing the masculine character, you know, like dominance in a meeting as much. So all
Mhm.
that to say, I love that story because I think that's one of the big things I've found in entrepreneurship is like this forced deep therapy of awareness of
Mhm.
who you are and what you want in life.
Yeah. I don't know if you follow Marie Forleo, but she
Yeah.
talks about multi-passionate interests, and I do think a lot of us that start something are multi-passionate, and it is hard to pick one thing and stay with it. And
Yeah.
I would just add that, I think self-awareness is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
I'm still learning things about myself. I did a deep dive into the Enneagram several years
Yeah.
ago that was incredibly helpful. So that's just my philosophy is I never stop learning. But I think you need to have a nut, if you're thinking about taking that jump, um, it's worth it to find a mentor or somebody who's doing what you're thinking about doing and ask some questions and also ask, what am I not asking that I should be asking?
Yeah.
Because to your point earlier, we don't know what we don't know. You can't
No.
ask about something that you can't even imagine. Again, how would
Yeah.
we have asked 10 years ago? How should we prepare for a pandemic? Oh, we should have $1 million in
Yeah.
reserve, which we didn't,
I
And
know.
so we weren't prepared. Nobody could have prepared us for that.
I love that, Kathy. And so on that topic too, I love you not only have a education background and specialty, but you've lived it too in terms of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship and your husband and you both starting things and kind of going through the conversations that need to happen. So you just mentioned those that are thinking of leaving and how can you prepare yourself?
Mhm.
What are some of the things if somebody is, I'm going to paint the picture of the person,
Yeah.
is maybe in a corporate job, husband or spouse, I should say wife, spouse that is
Mhm.
also in a corporate job. One of you is thinking of leaving. You're like, I'm unhappy. I don't know. I'm a little nervous to jump, but this is not for me. I've always wanted to do this. You have a spouse that is very steadfast in the quote safe route.
Mhm.
What are some things, and I always say I was blissfully unaware, you jump and then you figure it out, but perhaps what are some things you should think about that will, I don't want to say put a strain, but it's going to be a different conversation
Mhm.
you're going to start having. What are some things that maybe couples can help prepare them, if that's even a thing that you can do before you make the jump?
No, I think in hindsight,
Yeah.
I put together or have formulated, I guess, some things that are important conversations. And
Yeah.
I think this goes for any large decision that a couple is making, not just career, but
Mm,
it's a principle. I think it's out of a book, His Needs, Her Needs. And he talks about enthusiastic agreement,
mm,
not just, yeah, that's fine, but getting enthusiastic agreement. So, in the early stage, it might be that that person needs a sounding board in their spouse. Like, like you said, hey, I'm unhappy. I don't, I have this idea of starting something. It's kind of scary. Or maybe it's like, I have no fear. I think I can do this.
yeah.
And so, kind of getting a sense of where your spouse is with that. And then, there is definitely a risk assessment. Most entrepreneurs will say that people perceive them, I think, as taking big risks. And both my husband and multiple friends that we've known through the years have said it's not that they don't evaluate the risk, but they do. They assess the risk and kind of proceed accordingly. Some people have much more appetite for risk than others, but where I've seen it go wrong, like Mark was on a C12 board many years ago, It's a Christian peer board, like Vistage or
Mhm.
something like that. And there was a man that every month when they met, they would do this circle or wheel of, like, it was a personal evaluation. How are you doing? How's your marriage? How are you doing with your kids? How's your exercise? How are your eating habits, sleeping, all of
Yeah.
these things. Well, his was always his marriage
Mm.
was really in a bad place, and they ended up divorcing. And sometime after they divorced, Mark and I sat down with him and had a conversation trying to glean, what could have been different. And granted, we only had his side of it, but he said he just felt like he had no support. And I don't know what
Yeah.
conversations they had prior to them starting, but she was just like, just show me the money. Just
Yeah.
tell me if there's going to be money in the bank. She didn't care what stress he was experiencing, what challenges. So having conversations about, I mean, I think there's a couple of F's to consider. There's the
Yeah.
financial piece. Is this are you gonna pull from savings? Do you have someone who's going to invest? Is
Mhm.
it, you're talking about a corporate position, but it still could be someone who has an idea for an invention, something they
Mhm.
want to create, an app they want to make, and maybe they want to get some venture capital investment. What does that look like? What is that process like? What are the expectations?
Yep.
How long can our savings hold out? So there's the financial conversation, and some
Mhm.
couples might get really hung up there. Well, what would it take for you to be okay? Let's say one is very, security averse.
Yep.
Well, maybe you set a time frame around it. And I know that my savings will take me this far, and
Mm.
if I've not been able to replace my salary, then I'll go back to work. So
Yep.
there's different ways to negotiate, but I think avoiding the conversation is not where you wanna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think it's important to have a mentor or someone, maybe they're not, like a formal mentor, but maybe someone who is already doing this. See if, you can buy them coffee or dinner and just
Yeah.
really ask them some hard questions. What do I need to know?
Yeah.
Um, I think the other thing I would say is, um, to be prepared for failure.
Mm.
Um, that failure is part of it. I remember reading that, Sarah Blakely, the
Mhm.
fabulous founder
Yeah,
of
Spanx.
Spanx,
Oh, yeah.
her dad would ask them every day, "What did you fail at today?"
Yeah.
And I thought, "That's so brilliant," because so often we're like, we want our kids to be perfect. No, let them experience failure, and because that's how you build resilience.
Like you said, and I don't it's not all roses, so I'm not painting that picture, but failure, if you change that mindset, because I was scared of it for a while
Mhm,
too,
mhm.
which led to perfectionism, not trying something till I was sure I was ready, over researching the next step, like all of that
Yeah.
stuff, which I will say too, my job, it was almost required. I was in strategy, I was consulting. So the job was to look at all the ways it could go wrong and whatever the project was, and fix for it before it happened. And I saw how that was bleeding into my life and wanting to kind of follow these things. But that specific mindset, and I'm taking notes as you said this because I want to go back to some of the other things. But in terms of failure, inevitably what you think the whatever that thing will be, the business, the next venture, is not going to be what until you do it and you learn and you evolve and you edit and you pivot. That's the natural path of anything in life, right? And I think, to your point, a lot of times it's looked at as failure, but it is learning and changing. And I love how
Mhm.
Sarah says that because clearly she's one of the most successful women
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But her husband too, I follow his story, Jesse,
Yep.
he's just, their story together is amazing.
Hilarious.
Right? He's hilarious. His personality, them together. I just love how they have this lighthearted approach to life. But I think it's because
Mhm.
of these underlying things. Like it's not failure and it doesn't mean anything about you. It is about learning whatever it has. And I speak about this often in some of these other podcasts I've recorded. But for me, business is a bunch of micro tests about yourself and what works in the market. It's
Mm.
not anything to say about you personally, right? You're figuring out, does this pricing work? Do I like this person? Do I like this product that I've created? And it is a bunch of those micro tests because, this saying's always oversaid, but it's about the journey, not the destination. But you're literally
Mhm.
figuring out, what do I like? What is the market like? And so if you can remove it from being, that's a failure and it says something about me,
Mhm.
to, oh, look what I learned about this now. Like, what's the next thing? And so I think about that with my kids too. And I'm like, it's hard with school because there is, like you need a
Yeah.
certain grade, but I'm like, I like how her dad said that to her because it's like you have to
Mhm.
fail at stuff and turn that word into like learning. That's another way to say, what have you learned about yourself? So
Right.
thank you for
Right.
bringing that up because I think it's so important.
Well, there's a mindset, and I think if you can look at it, like you said, mindset, I am just now learning a lot more about mindset because it's so
Hmm.
much more accessible.
Yep.
But that mindset of make it a game, What if it's a
Yeah.
game and, you can pivot and like you said, it's not about you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like what you said too, because for me, so bring all these thoughts together, but there is, there is a assessment of what do you want in your life and what is success to you.
Mhm.
And I'm a finance background. Look at the numbers. And in fact, my husband is in finance. So we come and his side of the family was huge budgeters. Look at that before you make a decision. And my family's not. They were the entrepreneurial. So we've met in the middle and we've learned from each other. But when I went to leave my job and start my own,
Mhm.
obviously the numbers was one of the big things. But when we looked holistically at our life, and
Yeah.
I was more a risk taker than him in terms of career and trying the new thing. But the thing that came in, and you mentioned this, was family. And so when
Mhm.
I think holistically about the life we want to live, certainly numbers was always okay, here's what we need to make and here's the lifestyle we want to live. But the lifestyle we were living was going into an office, 3 kids at home. We needed 2 nannies because the bus times didn't work for us to get into the office, and not being able to drive. And they were young then, so they didn't even need to be driven. It was just to daycare and back. And I'm like, this is not in alignment with me. And so
Mm.
the stress that he and I would have each day, like if somebody was sick or school was shut down, and how do you do that with the meetings? When we looked holistically at the life we wanted to live, I said, success for me, and I'd written it down because I go back to it because it was flexibility. It was the ability
Mm.
to have a great relationship with my kids as they got older and knowing truly what was happening in their day instead of just transactional. It was the ability to be present and not stressed about meetings that I had the next day. So it was like those things, and certainly a number was on there. But I have to keep coming back to that because my husband and I's like it's ingrained in our brain to go back like, hey, did I make this quote venture successful yet? Because have I made X? But if I look at my success metrics, and I know I'm in a lucky place because I have a husband that still has a job,
Mhm.
that can kind of
Mhm.
offset the ups and ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship. But I'm way ahead of where I could even have envisioned I would have been
Mhm.
in terms of that full metric of success. And so I love how you mentioned that before because there's certainly multiple categories of
Mhm.
discussions,
Mhm.
but I totally agree. It oftentimes, I think when I talk to people, and probably because it's my line of work, so we're talking about their numbers, but it's finance focused. But I want the full picture of like, what do you want your life to be? And are
Yeah.
we in alignment? And how many of those things are off? Not just the
Yeah.
financial just perspective, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It makes total sense, and like I said, I've created resources now
Yeah.
that are more like, "Oh, I wish we'd had this back here."
See, but you
And
create from what, that's why I love your path, because I'm like, you're creating from
yeah.
what you didn't have that clearly people need.
Mhm.
So yes,
Mhm.
love that.
Yeah, it was an iteration or 2, but I came up with CRAVE,
Oh,
CRAVE,
hmm.
is a 5-pillar structure
Yeah.
that I think for any couple, but especially entrepreneurial couples who tend to be running with their hair on fire.
Yeah.
And I think you would probably say that even though you had 2 nannies, your day was perhaps more manageable than it is now. I mean, there's the trade-off for the
Yeah.
whole, like you said, the whole banana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you're clear about alignment.
That's a good
And
point. You're right.
I
Because
think
sometimes my brain feels like it's in overdrive, but it's because now I'm in charge and doing the scheduling. But I want to, that's in alignment with me, even though the head sometimes feels like it's
yeah.
more, but it's not burnout and stress. It's just load, I guess,
It's like
mental load.
you're
Yes.
trading
Yeah.
off, right?
Yeah.
Um, so vision is the V in CRAVE. CRAVE is
Mm.
communication,
Uh-huh.
rhythms and rituals that connect, affirmation and appreciation, vision, and then E is energy. Because I mean,
Oh.
that's our resource. And I think the vision piece is something we keep coming back to. It's something, I read a statistic yesterday, in fact, about how few couples basically really work at creating a vision together. And I think especially if you're
Mm.
going to be, one or both, God help you, are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Because when it gets hard,
Yeah.
and it will,
Yeah.
it's good to be able to go back as you've done and say, yeah, there's parts of this. Like when the kids are sick, I don't have a
Yeah.
nanny that's coming in.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out my day. I've got to, shift things around. But to have that vision, because especially when it gets hard,
Yeah.
you need to know, you need to be reminded why we're doing this. And we're
Mm.
doing it together.
Yeah.
We're
I
doing
love
it
that.
together. Like if we had these 5 guardrails,
Yeah.
it would go a long way in keeping couples connected while they're building this life they envision.
I love this methodology that you're talking about too, because I mean, I could hit on any one of them. I've wrote them all down. And I like, for instance, energy. We talked about vision, but we talked about energy
Mhm,
too.
mhm.
A, a real, a financial metric I use all the time is ROI, return on your investment. Are you getting back
Uh-huh.
what you want? But I love the pivot around there. I always talk about what's the return on your energy, because maybe
Mm,
something that you're doing isn't bringing in the most money or the biggest return. But if you're getting the most energy from it, that's like what are you doing in your day that gives you energy? But all of that is a mindset shift, because each one of these, I love this, it first takes you going inside. What are my rhythms and rituals personally that I
mhm.
enjoy and that are aligned with me? What is my vision? What brings me energy? And then, so it's a self-awareness, as we talked
Yep.
about earlier in this conversation, for each of these. And then it's a
Mhm.
conversation with your spouse or your significant other, who a partner. Actually, we could just say partner, because
Right,
business
right.
partner, they're so right that it
Yep.
takes then each of you knowing that. And I always said my husband was so good at knowing a lot of these. He just
Mm,
naturally knew what gave him energy. And it's been kind of his non-negotiable, in that I know what I need throughout the week, in the day, in the month, in the year, and I had lost that along the way. So it really was
yeah,
me doing this self-assessment and work to learn what that was, and then the conversation together. And so
yeah.
a lot of the friction for me was just because I didn't know and I couldn't articulate it to him. Fully willing to support me in whatever I needed, but it was that self-awareness. So I love the crave for yourself, and then
Mhm.
as a partnership too. I love that.
Yes.
Okay. Last question for you is, you work with couples, how can they work with you? And then also, I think you have something similar like this, that people like a free assessment or something that they can do with you too. I'd love for you to talk about that, because for the person that's listening, it's like, yep, where do I start with this? How do they
Mhm.
reach you, and
Where
where
do
do
I
they
start?
go to find more information? Yeah.
Sure. And I work with individuals and couples, but I love working with couples. I love working with women too. So I do have
Yeah.
some clients who are women who are coming for individual coaching,
Hmm.
somewhat related to relationships sometimes, but there's that relationship to ourself, right? That is very
Yeah.
important. So
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
coaching has to do with the self as well as maybe our coworkers, but working with couples is my deep passion because I truly believe the family is the foundation
Yeah.
of everything, and it's the why that we're working so hard.
Yeah.
My website is kathyrushing.com. That's Kathy with a K. If you
And
go
I'll
to
put
my
that in the show notes.
website,
Yeah.
okay, there's the pop-up that will come up is I did put together, this is a free resource. It's the 30-minute weekly marriage check-in, and
Mm.
it begins with gratitude. And it taps into different areas to make sure that, sometimes in marriage, and especially if you have a really strong personality, and I've seen couples where one is more quiet and not as outspoken, and they can kind of get lost, and so
Yeah.
this check-in is a way to ask each other, what is a personal goal you have right now?
Yeah.
Maybe either one of you are wanting to work on your health and fitness. So how can I support that this week?
Mm.
So it's and my husband and I do it almost every week. I have printed it off and I've put it in a like a one of those clear covers, like a report binder. So it's just sitting out on our dining room table or someplace where we see it and remember. Um, But that is a free resource, and I think that's a wonderful place for couples to start who might be saying, "Yeah, our marriage is good."
Yeah.
What I've learned is most people think it's good until it's not.
Yeah.
And without realizing it, there are small ways that we drift. We
Hmm.
wouldn't say we're unhappy. We wouldn't say that we don't like our husband or wife. Um, But it's not, things are just different and we don't
Yeah.
seem as connected. And certainly the entrepreneur life can kind of fuel that fire
Yeah.
because there's no whistle that goes off. Day is over,
Yeah.
and so it's a way to touch base on several really key areas to stay
I love
connected,
that,
whether you're
Kathy,
an
because
entrepreneur, whether you're working in corporate, whether you're in leadership. I would
whether
say
you're a
high
busy
achieving
parent that
couples.
can,
Busy
yeah,
parent.
and if
Mhm.
it, yeah, that is like becomes transactional after because you're just in the motion. You're
Oh,
missing. You're
it's
passing each other. You're
yeah.
handing off.
Do you have the
So
kids? Who's got the
yeah,
lunch? Who's going to the,
yeah,
parents'
and
night out or whatever?
and you wait until the quote time, but the kids are there all I mean, you don't have like your quiet time. So I love this not
Mhm.
only as a reminder that,
Mhm.
there's stuff besides the transactional and it's important to cover, but
Yeah.
as a prompt of the different topics of checking in with the other person in a um before it before it becomes an issue, obviously, but
Very
things like you
proactive,
use the
yes.
gym, yeah, as an example is
Mhm.
before that becomes a where you're what's the word I'm looking for? You start getting frustrated with your partner, but you haven't even talked about it. So I
Right.
like this is
Right.
just like before there's underlying anger or resentment's
Mhm.
the word I'm looking for. It's a
Mm.
conversation at the start. So I love that. And they can find that on your website, kathyrushing.com. I will
Yep.
put that on the show notes and you're on all the social channels too,
I'm
LinkedIn,
on primarily
Instagram.
LinkedIn.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with all this. I told you at the beginning of this, like I see it in entrepreneurs. There is stresses that come. I grew up with it. Parents are still lovingly married, not to say, but it's a unique
Yeah.
beast.
Yeah.
And now I see the different conversations my husband and I are having after we've gone, but one of us is corporate, one of us is not. And so it doesn't matter the change, but I think there's unique conversations around specifically kind of
Mhm.
the job and what do we need to have around that. But so I love what you're doing and thank you for sharing all of that. And I know that there's so much more to dive into, like you said, resources and just conversations that are unique to you and your spouse or your partner in whatever way. And I'm
Mhm.
so uh happy is not the right word, but that you're out there kind of in that niche that it's so
Oh,
needed in identifying that because I think it can feel like a really lonely place sometimes if you don't find your
for
people.
sure.
And so
Yes.
you're out there supporting them. So thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for
You're
being
so
on the podcast
welcome.
and saying,
Oh,
oh,
thank you
thank
for
you.
having me, Brooke. It's
Oh,
been delightful.
I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scale with Clarity. If it sparked something for you and you're wondering what your next step might look like outside of corporate, I created a free tool called the Clarity Compass. It's designed to help you uncover your strengths and start mapping what an aligned business could look like. You can download it at the link in the show notes. And if you'd like more personalized support, I also offer one-on-one coaching to help you design and build a solopreneur path that fits your life. And until next time, thanks so much for listening. Be sure to tune back in for more stories and conversations that I hope inspire and guide you on your own journey.